In this video we are going to go over 3 creative photography techniques that are pretty fun to try. So time to grab my bag and hit the streets. Let's go! The weather today is cold, overcasted, boring, typical Dutch weather. And this is a day where you could consider just staying inside and finding another day to do some nice photography, but it could also be a nice day to do some creative photography exercises. And if you feel like these types of photos are just a little bit gimmicky, not real photography, well, partly I agree with you, but it's not like every photo you take has to be a keeper and you don't really have to put everything you take on social media, because doing these techniques you might learn a thing or two. So bear with me, and the first thing we are going to experiment with is multiple exposures. The camera we are using today is the great and powerful Ricoh GRIII. It's great because it produces amazing images, but also because it's very convenient in its menu structure and button placement. Simply hit the drive mode and go to multi-exposure. After that you can find compositions that fit well together and you can get creative. After you take your first shot and select next shot, you get an overlay so you see what your multiple exposure image is going to look like. Now there are several ways you can do a multiple exposure shot. You can do it in camera. With the Ricoh GRIII you have several blend modes and you can really get creative with it. And what I find is that it is very nice to try and find different compositions and combining them, and especially using the brighter areas and the darker areas to come up with creative shots. Now you could also do this in Photoshop, and what's great about doing it in Photoshop is that you can really choose where you want to blend more and where you want to blend less. So in Photoshop you have more creative possibilities to get the results you really want. If you are interested in doing multiple exposure photography using the Ricoh GR, on the Ricoh GR channel there's a very nice video about doing multiple exposures. I'll link it up here or here, and you can go and check it out. This technique is not something new. It has been around since the film days. The Hasselblad, for instance, is a camera a lot of people do multiple exposures with on film. Maybe I should try that sometimes on mine. If you search multiple exposure images online, you see a lot of people that combine shots of nature with portraits. And I think this technique is definitely worth exploring a bit deeper some other time. The next thing I would like to talk to you about is shooting with long exposures. This is not something you can only do at night, and this is not something you can only do on a tripod. No, you can also get more creative with it. You can try tracking your subjects, giving the background motion blur. You can also keep your camera steady and have the subjects moving in the frame, creating some kind of motion. But you can also use slow shutter speeds when you are moving yourself. Now, how do you get a slow shutter speed during the day? There are several things you can do. Some cameras have a built-in ND filter, but what's also very cool is that there is this NiSi Filter Kit that you can use on the Ricoh GRIII. I'm not sure if they are going to make one for the GR3X as well. Whoops. But with this filter kit there comes an ND filter and a graduated ND filter, and you can just slap them on there so you can get nice slow shutter speeds. So that's what we're going to do. Time to get a little bit more abstract. The slower your shutter speed, the more abstract your photos will get, up until the point you are left with nothing more than a blurry mess. What I forgot to mention is that stopping down your aperture is the first thing you should do if you want to achieve slow shutter speeds. I think this is a fun technique to try out, and the results are surprising. The final thing I would like to talk to you about today is something called ICM, or intentional camera movement. For this you also use a slow shutter speed, but instead of trying to have one part of the photo in focus and another part of the photo blurry, you kind of get creative altogether, and you try to find compositions that you usually can't find. And what I mean by that, for instance, if when you are moving your camera from top to bottom, you blend the sky in with the foreground. And if you have a very bright light, you can almost paint with this light on your sensor. For instance, what you can try is having a shutter speed of a second, for instance. Just compose a shot, and when it's shooting, you move your camera around just a little bit. And when you are using a shaking motion like that, you really get interesting results. So that's the third creative technique we are trying today, intentional camera movement. If you want to learn some more about intentional camera movement, or ICM, I can recommend the Instagram called Keiso or Keisho. I'm pretty sure I mispronounced the name, sorry for that. But this guy or girl really does a lot of intentional camera movement, and the images he or she creates are really interesting. And I think it's nice to try this sometimes, because you get a new perspective on your compositions, because you can combine lighter areas with darker areas, and you can create these blurry, almost dreamy kinds of worlds. And I think that's pretty cool. So that's an Instagram quick tip. Also, using the NiSi Filter Kit really is nice. I made a video about it with my friend Mike Meijzebelt about landscape photography using the Ricoh GRIII. I'll link it up here or here. Well, it just goes to show that you can use it for street photography as well. And I'm all about being creative and trying to explore for yourself where your creative boundaries are. And I think the 3 creative techniques I have tried today are a good example of that. So I'm not too sure about the results, but I am pretty happy with the amount of creativity. Personally, I think these images look like paintings, an interpretation of reality filled with movement and energy. Some people might come to the conclusion that these images make them feel nauseous and epileptic. Well, to each his own, right? Whatever the case may be, it is fun to experiment. Which of the 3 techniques I've tried today is your favorite and why? Let me know in the comments below, because I'm interested to hearing your thoughts about this. Or maybe do you try some other techniques? Let me know, because then I can incorporate them in a separate video some other time as well. This is not a video about trying to shoot the perfect image. This is just about exploring your own creativity. And of course, there are some people who are saying, stick to the basics, this is not real photography. But I don't think you should let people tell you what you can or cannot shoot. Photography is also about having fun and about doing nice stuff. And I think that's what we have done today. That's it for this week's video. Thank you so much for watching. If you aren't already a subscriber of this YouTube channel, please consider doing so, because it's all about having fun and exploring photography together. So thank you for the support, and I'll see you next week. Peace.